Alright. Excerpt from a local newspaper. Ominous unknown killer is still at large. After weeks of unexplained murders, the ominous unknown killer is still on the rise. After little evidence has been found, a young boy states that he survived one of the killer's attacks and bravely tells his story. I had a bad dream, and I woke up in the middle of the night, says the boy. I saw that for some reason the window was open, even though I remember it being closed before I went to bed. I got it up and shut it once more. Afterwards, I simply crawled under my covers and tried to get back to sleep. But that's when I had a strange feeling, like someone was watching me. I looked up and nearly jumped out of my bed. There, in the little ray of light illuminating from between my curtains, were a pair of two eyes. Those weren't regular eyes. They were dark, ominous eyes. They were bordered in black and just plain out terrified me. That's when I saw his mouth. A long, horrendous smile that made every hair on my body stand up. The figure stood there, watching me. Finally, after what seemed like forever, he said it. A simple phrase, but said in a way only a madman could speak. He said, "Go to sleep." I let out a scream, and that's what sent him at me. He pulled up a knife, aiming at my heart. He jumped on top of my bed. I fought him back. I kicked. I punched. I rolled around, trying to knock him off me. And that's when my dad burst in. The man threw the knife, and it went right into my dad's shoulder. The man probably would have finished him off if one of the neighbors hadn't already called the police. They drove into the parking lot and ran towards the door. The man turned and ran down the hallway. I heard a smash like glass breaking, and as I came out of the room, I saw the window that was pointing towards the back of my house was broken. I looked out it to see him vanish into the distance. And I can tell you one thing, I will never forget that face. Those cold, evil eyes and that psychotic smile. They will never leave my head. Police are still on the lookout for this man. If you see anyone that fits the description in this story, please contact your local police department. Jeff and his family had just moved into a new neighborhood. His dad had gotten a promotion at work, and they thought it would be best to live in one of those fancy, safe neighborhoods. Jeff and his brother Lou couldn't complain, though. A new, better house? What was not to love? As they were getting unpacked, one of their neighbors came by. "Oh, hello," she said. "I'm Barbara. I live across the street from you. Well, I just want to introduce myself and to introduce my son." She turns and calls her son over. "Billy, these are our new neighbors." Billy said hi and then ran back to play in the yard. "Well," says Jeff's mother, "I'm Margaret, and this is my husband, Peter, and my two sons, Jeff and Lou." They each introduced themselves, and then Barbara invited them to her son's birthday. Jeff and his brother were about to object when their mother said that they would love to. When Jeff and his family are done packing, Jeff went up to his mom. "Mom, why would you invite us to some kid's party? If you haven't noticed, I'm not some dumb kid." "Jeff," says his mother, "we just moved here. We should show that we want to spend some time with our neighbors. Now, we're going to that party, and that's final." Jeff started to object, but stopped himself, knowing that he couldn't really say anything to change her mind. When his mom said something, it was final. He walked up to his room and plopped down on his bed. He sat there looking at his ceiling when suddenly he got a weird feeling. Not so much a pain, but a weird, tugging feeling. He dismissed it as just some random something. He heard his mother call down to get his stuff, and he walked down to get it. The next day, Jeff walked downstairs to get breakfast and get ready for school. As he sat there eating his breakfast, he once again got that feeling. This time, it was stronger. It gave him a slight tugging pain, but he once again dismissed it. And as he and Lou finished breakfast, they walked down to the bus stop. They sat there waiting for the bus, and then all of a sudden, some kid on a skateboard jumped over them, only inches above their laps. They both jumped back in surprise. "Hey, what the hell?" The kid landed and turned back to them. He kicked his skateboard up and caught it with his hands. The kid seemed to be about 12, 1 year younger than Jeff. He wore a Aeropostale shirt and ripped blue jeans. Well, 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 it looks like we got some new meat. Suddenly, two other kids appeared. One was super skinny and the other was huge. Well, since you're new here, I'd like to introduce ourselves. Over there is Keith. Jeff and Lou looked over to the skinny kid. He had a dopey face that you would expect a stupid sidekick to have. And that there's Troy. They looked over at the fat kid. Talk about a tub of lard. This kid looked like he hadn't exercised since he was crawling. And I, said the first kid, am Randy. Now, for all the kids in this neighborhood, there's a small price for bus fare if you catch my drift. Lou stand up, ready to punch the lights out of the kid's eyes when one of his friends pulled a knife on him. I'd hoped you would be more cooperative, but it seems we must do this the hard way. The kid walked up to Lou and took his wallet out of his pocket. Jeff got that feeling again. Now it was truly strong, a burning sensation. He stood up, but Lou gestured him to sit down. Jeff ignored him and walked up to the kid. Listen here, you little punk. Give back my bro's wallet, or else. Randy put the wallet in his pocket and pulled out his own knife. Oh, and what will you do? Just as he finished the sentence, Jeff popped the kid in the nose. As Randy reached for his face, Jeff grabbed the kid's wrist and broke it right there. Randy screamed and Jeff grabbed the knife from his hand. Toby and Keith rushed Jeff, but Jeff was way too quick. He threw Randy to the ground. Keith lashed out at him, but Jeff ducked and stabbed him straight in the arm. Keith dropped his knife and fell to the ground screaming. Troy rushed him too, but Jeff didn't even need the knife. He just punched Troy straight in the stomach, and Troy went down. As he fell, he puked all over the ground. Lou could do nothing but just look in amazement at Jeff. Jeff, how did you... That was all he said. They saw the bus coming and knew they'd be blamed for the whole thing, so they started running as fast as they could. As they ran, they looked back and saw the bus driver rushing over to Randy and the others. As Jeff and Lou made it to school, they didn't dare tell him what happened. All they did was sit and listen all day. Lou just thought of that as his brother beating up a few kids, but Jeff knew it was something more. It was something scary. As he got that feeling, he felt how powerful it was, the urge to just hurt someone. He didn't like how it sounded, but he couldn't help feeling happy. He felt that strange feeling go away and stay away for the entire day of school. Even as he walked home due to the whole thing near the bus stop and how he probably wouldn't be taking the bus anymore, he felt happy. When he got home, his parents asked him how his day was, and he said in a somewhat ominous voice, "It was a wonderful day." Next morning, he heard a knock at his front door. He walked down to find two police officers at the door, his mother looking back at him with a glaring look. Jeff, these officers tell me that you attacked 3 kids, that wasn't regular fighting, and that they were stabbed. Stabbed, son! Jeff's gaze fell to the floor, showing his mother that it was in fact true. Mom, they were the ones who pulled the knives on me and Lou. Son, says one of the cops, we found 3 kids. 2 stabbed, 1 having a bruise on his stomach, and we have witnesses proving that you had fled the scene. Now what does that tell us? Jeff knew it was no use. Jeff knew that it was no use. He could say him and Lou had been attacked, but then there was no proof that it was not him who had attacked first. They couldn't say that they weren't fleeing, because, truth be told, they were. So Jeff couldn't really defend himself or Lou. Son, calm down your brother. Jeff couldn't do it, since it was him who beat up all the kids. Sir, it was me. I was the one who beat up the kids. Lou tried to hold me back, but he couldn't stop me. The cop looked at his partner, and they both nodded. Well, kid, looks like a year in juvie. Wait, says Lou. They all looked to see him holding a knife. The officers pulled their gun and locked them on Lou. It was me. I beat up those little punks. Have the marks to prove it. He lifted up his sleeves to reveal cuts and bruises as if he was in a struggle. Son, just put the knife down, said the officer. Lou held up the knife and dropped it to the ground. He put his hands up and walked over to the cops. No, Lou, it was me. I did it. Jeff had tears running down his face. Poor bro, trying to take the blame for what I did. Well, take me away. The police led Lou out to the patrol car. Lou, tell them it was me. Tell them I was the one who beat up those kids. Jeff's mother put her hands on his shoulders. Jeff, please, you don't have to lie. We know it's Lou. You can stop. Jeff watched hopelessly as the cop car sped off with Lou inside. A few minutes later, Jeff's dad pulled into the driveway, seeing Jeff's face, and knew something was wrong. Son, what is it? Jeff couldn't answer. His vocal cords were strained from crying. Instead, Jeff's mother walked his father inside to break the bad news to him as Jeff wept in the driveway. After an hour or so, Jeff walked back in the house, seeing that his parents were both shocked, sad, and disappointed. He couldn't look at them. He couldn't see how they thought of Lou when it was his fault. He just went to sleep, trying to get the whole thing off his mind. 2 days went by with no word from Lou at JDC. No friends to hang out with, nothing but sadness and guilt. That is until Saturday, when Jeff was woke up by his mother with a happy, sunshiny face. Jeff, it's the day, she said as she opened up the curtains and let light flood into his room. What? What's today? Asked Jeff as he stirs awake. Why, it's Billy's party. He was now fully awake. Mom, you're joking, right? You don't expect me to go to some kid's party after... There was a long pause. Jeff, we both know what happened. I think this party could be the thing that brightens up the past days. Now get dressed. Jeff's mother walked out of the room and downstairs to get herself ready. He fought himself to get up. He picked out a random shirt and pair of jeans and walked down the stairs. Saw his mother and his father all dressed up, his mother in a sundress and his father in a suit. Thought, why would they wear such fancy clothes to a kid's party? Son, is that all you're going to wear? Said Jeff's mom. Better than wearing too much, he said. His mother pushed down the feeling to yell at him and hid it with a smile. Now, Jeff, we may be overdressed, but this is how you go if you want to make an impression, said his father. Jeff grunted and went back up to his room. I don't have any fancy clothes, he yelled downstairs. Just pick out something, called his mom. He looked around in his closet for what he would call fancy. Found a pair of black dress pants he had for special occasions and an undershirt. Couldn't find an overshirt to go with it, though. He looked around and found only striped and patterned shirts, none of which seemed to go with dress pants. Finally, he just pulled out a white hoodie and put it on. You're wearing that? They both said. His mother looked at her watch. Oh, no time to change. Let's just go, she said as she herded Jeff and his father out the door. They crossed the street over to Barbara and Billy's house. They knocked on the door, and at it appeared that Barbara, just like his parents, was way overdressed. As they walked inside, Jeff can see the adults, but no kids. The kids are out in the yard. Jeff, how about you go out and meet some of them, said Barbara. Jeff walked outside to a yard full of screaming, yelling, running kids. They're all in weird cowboy costumes and shooting each other with plastic guns. Might as well be standing in a Toys R Us. Suddenly a kid came up to him and handed him a toy gun and a hat. Hey, wanna play? He said. No, kid. I'm way too old for this stuff. The kid looked at him with that weird puppy dog face. Please? Said the kid. Fine, said Jeff. He put on the hat and pretended to shoot at the other kids. At first he thought it was totally ridiculous, but then he actually started to have fun. It might not have been super cool, but it was the first time he'd done something that took his mind off Lou, so he played with the kids for a while until he heard a noise. A weird rolling noise. Then it hit him. Randy, Troy, and Keith all jumped over the fence on their skateboards. Jeff dropped the fake gun and ripped off the hat. Randy looked at Jeff with a burning hatred. Hello, Jeff, is it? He said. We have some unfinished business. Jeff saw his bruised nose. I think we're even. I beat the crap out of you and you get my brother sent to juvie. Randy got an angry look in his eyes. Oh no, I don't go for even. I go for winning. You may have kicked our asses that one day, but not today, he said. And then Randy rushed at Jeff. They both fell to the ground. Randy punched Jeff in the nose, and Jeff grabbed him by the ears and headbutted him. Jeff pushed Randy off of him and both of them rose to their feet. Kids were screaming, and parents were running out of the house. Troy and Keith both pulled guns out of their pockets. "No one interrupts, or guts will fly," they said. Randy pulled out a knife on Jeff and stabbed it into his shoulder. Jeff screamed and fell to his knees. Randy started kicking him into the face. After 3 kicks, Jeff grabbed his foot and twisted it, causing Randy to fall. Jeff stood up and walked towards the back door, and Troy grabbed him. "Need some help?" he said. He picks Jeff up by the back of the collar, and throws him through the patio door. As Jeff tries to grab the stand, he's kicked down to the ground. Randy repeatedly starts kicking Jeff until he starts to cough up blood. "Come on, Jeff, fight me!" He picks Jeff up and throws him into the kitchen. Randy spots a bottle of vodka on the counter and smashes the glass over Jeff's head. "Fight!" He throws Jeff back into the living room. "Come on, Jeff, look at me!" Jeff looks up, his face riddled with blood. "I was the one who got your brother sent to juvie. Now you're just going to sit here and let him rot in there for a whole year? You should be ashamed." Jeff starts to get up. "Oh, finally, you stand and fight." Jeff is now to his feet, blood and vodka on his face. Once again, he gets that strange feeling, the one in which he hasn't felt for a while. "Finally, he's up," says Randy as he runs at Jeff. That's when it happens. Something inside Jeff snapped. His psyche destroyed, all rational thinking gone. All he can do is kill. He grabs Randy and pile drives him into the ground. He gets on top of him and punches him straight in the heart. The punch causes Randy's heart to stop. As Randy gasps for breath, Jeff hammers down on him, punch after punch. Blood gushes from Randy's body until he takes one final breath and dies. Everyone is looking at Jeff now. The parents, the sobbing kids, even Troy and Keith, although they easily break from their gaze and point their guns at Jeff. Jeff sees the guns trained on him and runs for the stairs. As he runs, Troy and Keith let fire out on him. Each shot missing, though. Jeff runs up the stairs. He hears Troy and Keith follow up from behind. As they let out their final rounds of bullets, Jeff ducks into the bathroom. He grabs the towel rack, thinking quickly, and rips it off the wall. Troy and Keith race in, knives ready. Troy swings his knife blindly at Jeff, who backs away and bangs the towel rack into Troy's face. Troy goes down hard. Now all that's left is Keith. He's more agile than Troy, and ducks when Jeff swings the towel rack. He dropped the knife and grabbed Jeff by the neck, pushed him into the wall. A thing of bleach fell down on top of him from the top shelf. It burned both of them, and they both started to scream. Jeff wiped his eyes as best as he could, pulled back the towel rack, and swung it straight into Keith's head. As he lay there, bleeding to death, he let out an ominous smile. "What's so funny?" asked Jeff. Keith pulled out a lighter and switched it on. "What's funny," he said, "is that you're covered in bleach and alcohol." Jeff's eyes widened as Keith threw the lighter at him. As soon as the flame made contact with him, the flames ignited the alcohol and the vodka. While the alcohol burned him, the bleach bleached his skin. Jeff let out a terrible screech as he caught fire. He tried to roll out the fire, but it was no use. The alcohol had made him a walking inferno. He ran down the hall and fell down the stairs. Everybody started screaming as they saw Jeff, now a man on fire, drop to the ground, nearly dead. The last thing Jeff saw was his mother and other parents trying to extinguish the flame. It's when he passed out. When Jeff woke, he had a cast wrapped around his face. He couldn't see anything, but he felt a cast on his shoulder and stitches all over his body. He tried to stand up, but then he realized that there was a tube in his arm. And when he tried to get up, it fell out, and the nurse rushed in. "I don't think you can get out of bed just yet," she said as she put him back on the bed and reinserted the tube. Jeff sat there with no vision, no idea of what his surroundings were. Finally, after what seemed like hours, he heard his mother. "Honey, are you okay?" she asked. Jeff couldn't answer, though. His face was covered, and he was unable to speak. "Oh, honey, I have great news. After all the witnesses told the police that Randy confessed to trying to attack you, they decided to let Lou go." This made Jeff almost bolt up, stopping halfway, remembering the tube coming out of his arm. "He'll be out by tomorrow, and then you two will be together again." Jeff's mother hugs Jeff and says her goodbyes. The next couple of weeks were those where Jeff was visited by his family. Then came the day where his bandages were to be removed. His family were all there to see it, what he would look like. As the doctors unwrapped the bandages from Jeff's face, everyone was on the edge of their seats. They waited until the last bandage holding the cover over his face was almost removed. "Let's hope for the best," says the doctor. He quickly pulls off the cloth, letting the rest fall from Jeff's face. Jeff screams at the sight of his face. Lou and Jeff's dad stare awestruck at his face. What? What happened to my face?" Jeff said. He rushed out of bed and ran to the bathroom. He looked in the mirror and saw the cause of the distress. His face, it was horrible. His lips were burnt to a deep shade of red. His face was turned into pure white, and his hair singed from brown to black. He slowly put his hand to his face. It had a sort of leathery feel to it now. He looked back at his family and then at the mirror. "Jeff," says Lou, "it's not that bad." "Not that bad," said Jeff. "It's perfect." His family were equally surprised. Jeff started laughing uncontrollably. His parents noticed that his left eye and hand were twitching. "Jeff, are you okay?" "Okay? I've never felt more happy." "Look at me. This face goes perfectly with me." He couldn't stop laughing. He stroked his face, feeling it, looking at it in the mirror. What caused this? Well, you may recall that when Jeff was fighting Randy, something in his mind and his sanity snapped. Now he was left as a crazy killing machine. That is, his parents didn't know. "Doctor," said Jeff's mom, "is my son all right, in the head?" "Oh, yes, this behavior is typical for patients that have been taking very large amounts of painkillers. If his behavior doesn't change in a few weeks, bring him back in here and we'll give him a psychological test." "Oh, thank you, doctor." Jeff's mother went over to Jeff. "Jeff, sweetie, it's time to go." Jeff looks away from the mirror. His face still formed into a crazy smile. "'Kay, Mommy." His mother took him by the shoulder and took him to get his clothes. "This is what came in," said the lady at the desk. Jeff's mom looked down to see the black dress pants and white hoodie her son wore. Now they were clean of blood and stitched together. Jeff's mother led him to his room and made him put his clothes on. Then they left, not knowing that it was their final day. Later that night, Jeff's mother woke to a sound coming from the bathroom. It sounded like someone was crying softly. She slowly walked over to see what it was. When she looked into the bathroom, she saw a horrendous sight. Jeff had taken a knife and carved a smile into his cheeks. "Jeff, what are you doing?" asked his mother. Jeff looked over to his mother. "I couldn't keep smiling, Mommy. It hurt after a while. But now, I can smile forever." Jeff's mother noticed his eyes, ringed in black. "Jeff, your eyes!" His eyes were seemingly never closing. "I couldn't see my face. I got tired and my eyes started to close. I burned out my eyelids so I could forever see myself, my new face." Jeff's mother slowly started to back away, seeing that her son had gone insane. What's wrong, Mommy? Aren't I beautiful?" "Yes, son," she said. "Yes, you are. Let me go get Daddy so he can see your face." She ran to the room and shook Jeff's dad from his sleep. "Honey, get the gun. She stopped as she saw Jeff in the doorway holding a knife. "Mommy, you lied." That's the last thing they hear as Jeff rushes them with a knife, gutting both of them. His brother Lou woke up, startled by some noise. He didn't hear anything else, so he just shut his eyes and tried to get back to sleep. As he was on the border of slumber, he got the strangest feeling that someone was watching him. He looked up before Jeff's hand covered his mouth. He slowly raised the knife, ready to plunge it into Lou. Lou thrashed here and there, trying to escape Jeff's grip. "Shh," Jeff said. "Just go to sleep." It was a few weeks ago that the hay bales started creeping slowly away from the house. Every morning when I woke up, Each had moved a few hundred feet from where it was before. I assumed it was just pranksters with nothing better to do, and so I ignored it. Within a few days, though, the bales began to approach the boundaries of the farm. I was tired of the whole game by then and decided to move them back. It took a tedious hour to bring them all back from where they were over near the house again, and by the time I was done, I was ready to snap the neck of whatever little pissant was deciding to screw with me. The next morning, I found each and every one of my horses messily decapitated. The smell was what woke me up. Each one was slumped over against the side of its stall. There were no signs of the heads. I spent the rest of the day cleaning up the mess and burying the remains. It was only when I was done that I noticed the bales of hay all had returned to their positions from the day before, scattered out into the fields. This time I left them where they were. That night, I sat on my porch with my shotgun in my hand and a pot of coffee on the table next to me. I sat for hours, straining my eyes into the fields to catch a glimpse of who was moving my hay bales. Finally, I was beginning to nod off. I would have, but just as my eyes began to close, I heard a clamor and a rustling of trees from the nearby woods. I leaned forward, my heart racing with excitement. I was going to catch that bastard. I fumbled with my gun and fidgeted in the seat, waiting anxiously for whoever it was to get close enough to ambush. It was only then the thing got close enough for me to make out its silhouette in the dark that it was frozen still. The thing that crept into my fields from the nearby woods didn't seem to notice me sitting there. It stalked, hunched and deliberate, through the field with the posture of a tiptoeing thief. If not for the fact that it must have towered to over 10 feet tall even in its crouched position, it might have seemed almost frail. The thinness of its arms and legs and the emaciated, caved-in quality of its chest reminded me of a starving animal. Still, this thing was undeniably strong, and I watched it hoist each bale up into its arms with ease, and set it down carefully a while away, taking only a few strides to cover the distance. I watched it work, moving each bale thoughtfully. Every once in a while it would straighten up to look around at the other bale's positions in the field before adjusting the one it was working on, ever so slightly. Before it left, it looked towards the house. I felt its eyes sweep over me in the dark, but whether it saw me or not, I couldn't tell. Then it turned silently and crept back the way it came, disappearing into the dark of the woods. It took me an hour before I had the courage to move at all. I went inside after a while, but didn't sleep that night. It was only when the sun rose that I dared step off my porch into the fields. The hay bales were where it left them. Strangely, it didn't move them as far as it had in the previous days. They were approaching something invisible in the fields, and as I looked at them I realized they must be marking some line or something. Indeed, as I walked around the house I saw the distant circle that they formed with me at the center. At first I thought the bales were just being haphazardly moved away from the house, but now I could see they were instead being moved towards some boundary. The thing was sending me a message. I slept very uneasily that night, and only because I was exhausted. The next morning the bales hadn't moved at all. They didn't move at all for the rest of that week, in fact. They were finally where the thing wanted them. I made myself sick trying to interpret them. Why would this thing expend so much energy moving my hay bales and threaten me with such violence should I try to interfere? Killing my horses was just that, a threat, an intelligent threat at that. I knew it would scare me, and it knew that I would understand the implications. The sound of an automobile working its way along the road to my farm one morning gave me a little rush of excitement. I'd been planning to abandon the farm since I saw the thing, but I couldn't hope to leave on foot without risking it treating me like it treated my horses. But if I could get in the car with whoever was coming my way, I might be able to escape before it could stop me. I didn't know or care who it was. I decided that the moment they stopped the car, I would jump in the passenger seat and tell them to get the hell out of here. I didn't get the chance. The car worked its way slowly along the road. Trundling across the uneven ground. I urged it silently to hurry. That was when it passed between the two bales placed on either side of the road that I began to hear a booming clatter from the woods. The thing burst suddenly from between the trees, sprinting on all four of its terrible, gangly limbs towards the car. Within a few seconds it was there, pouncing on the automobile like a predatory cat. Within moments it was picking and peeling the vehicle's steel frame apart, working to get at the driver. The man, whoever he was, screamed all the while, and I can hear him even over the crunching of metal and the shattering of glass. It was only when the thing crushed him carelessly in its hand that the screaming stopped. It tossed him away, and straightened up to look at me once again. In the sunlight I could see the inhumanity of it. It was composed entirely of something awful and alive, which was lashed together in a messy semblance of a human form. Whatever it was made of looked so polished and hard that if it weren't for the minute writhing of the stuff, I'd think it was made of granite. The thing retreated back to the woods, and I was left to my shock. My eyes wandered to where the car sat, the engine still sputtering between two of the hay bales. Suddenly, the message was clear. I am this thing's captive, and I am not allowed visitors. Nothing may cross the borders it has set. I'm trapped here by the thing that stalks the fields, and it demands nothing except that I never leave. Still don't know if I can handle being that thing's canary. I've been thinking hard for the last few days since I saw it crush that man's chest and silence him before he could finish his scream. If I crossed the hay bale border, I'd probably do the same. I'd smash my skull before I can put my hands up to protect myself. I'd go and find a new pet, probably keep looking until it found someone who could stand knowing that it was waiting just outside, watching it at all hours with its shiny, insect-like eyes. I've been thinking hard for these last few days, and I might just make a run for it. Log 1. I awaken. I don't know it at the moment, but this day marks my 4th straight year of existing in the Dogscape. I push myself up from the carpet of writhing, twitching dog flesh beneath me and rise to my feet, stretching in the morning sun. It took me a while to learn to balance on the layer of solid dogs that now blankets every inch of solid ground. But nowadays I can walk and run as easily and as fast as I ever did on soil or concrete, perhaps faster. This was a city once, I think, though which one I can't remember. I only owe my guess to the massive pillars of dogs jutting into the sky, perhaps ancient buildings now completely filled and overgrown by canine biomatter. I climbed one once, sinking my fingers and toes deep into the dog wall to gain purchase, and after hours and hours of climbing was rewarded with an incredible vista. Furs and eyes, panting tongues and wagging tails, hugging the contours of the once barren land and stretching in a single amoebic mass farther than the eye can ever see. Now I don't do that, though. Now I merely go about my day. I hike to the gardens where the dog plants sprout up in weird, bizarre shapes from the floor of the dogscape and reach up to pluck the fetal puppy fruits right off the wagging, energetic branches. I bite into the succulent flesh, the juices dribbling down my chin and dripping down to be reabsorbed by the ground flesh, and revel in the savory taste. I'm thirsty, so I range until I find one of the mother mounds, and there I suckle at a teat patch until I have had my fill of milk. Sometimes I see other humans around me, as well adapted to the dogscape as I am, but I barely acknowledge them, say nothing. What, after all, is there to say? The world is different now. What meaning would our old words even have? Free-ranging dogs are becoming rarer and rarer to see now, and those I do see seem as lost, as passive as I am. They too graze on the dog plants, step carefully over the undulating, bleeding dog floor, dimly acknowledge myself and one another. In the distant sky and on the far horizon I sometimes see massive forms sail or crawl or undulate, and I wonder if in this new world, singular ambulatory dogs have become as obsolete as I have. I dug down once, down beneath the dogs, beneath the hair and the ears and the barking. It was hard and it took a lot of planning. I had to destroy one of the dog trees with my hands, rip out the twisted, yard-long communal spines that served them once as branches, and lash them together with tendons and skin. But soon I had tools, pitchforks, spears, shovels. Picked a spot where the dog floor seemed shallower and set to work. The blood started spurting when my spear first broke into the surface, and I didn't stop for hours and hours and hours. I was drenched in gore and viscera, covered in flecks of bone and meat and brain, but I learned to ignore the sickening squelching sounds, ward off the smell, and just keep going deeper and deeper, spearing and levering out dogs of stranger size and build, dogs with two heads, dogs with human hands, dogs with writhing tentacles where their back legs should be. Eventually I came to the end of the dogs, or perhaps the beginning of whatever lies beyond the dogs, an expanse of multicolored patchwork fur that extended as far as I could dig in any direction. I could pierce it with great difficulty, but it barely bled, and try as I might, I could only barely peel the skin away and reveal the layer of striated, grayish muscle beneath. It started to tremble as I watched it, shaking the very dog matter around me. And I realized that the Dogscape was beginning to regenerate itself, close in over me, seal me in. So I fled, climbing back up into the light. Log 3. The stream trickled warmly past the black leathery edges of the puppy mouth stream. The saliva waters churned as they flowed from the bed of the stream lined with the ever-lapping tongues of eager greeting puppies. To feel a rock on the shore is to find sharp milk teeth of weaned dogs cast to the tufts of mange weeds, growing into spits and bank. The head of the stream is split by a single mound of golden fur, like an upholstered boulder set with large golden eye that swerves to see passing visitors. The waters will bubble and froth should the eye see you, the tongues lapping nervously, loving greetings with gurgled yips. The Dogscape, that's what we call it. Us humans that banded together, I mean. We sit around campfires and cook the whelps we collected from the dog trees. The only flammable material we have is the acrid fur that grows everywhere. It offends all senses, but soon the meal is prepared. The only food sources are the dog trees and the mother mounds, some foolish enough to dig for meat. Though the reward is great, many don't come back, for the dog flesh regrows above them, trapping them inside the moist ground. Primitive tools are forged from bones and leather, such as shovels and knives and clothes. I have lived here for as long as I can remember. There are faint shimmers of the time before the dog flesh, but what use is there dwelling on the past when it cannot fill our stomachs in the present? I am our tribe's scribe. My name is Doc. I used to have a real name, but it escapes my memory. I record all of our findings and knowledge in my leather pages, using dog blood as ink. There were times when there were more of us. The tribe started with almost as many as 60 people. Now our numbers are in as few as 20. Our leader is Keef. He instructs us to find food, build shelter, and bring fire. He abuses his power, taking 5 wives and eating more than his share of the food. But those who speak against him meet death in the night. It's hellish, but there's no other choice. Without guidance, we will die out here. So we must remain under his leadership. I had a dog right after the Dogscape happened. His name was Carl, and he always followed me around. When I was almost dead from starving, he got me dog fruits. When I was dying of thirst, he held milk in his mouth and gave it to me. One day his foot got stuck in a mouth, and I couldn't get him out, so I watched while it swallowed him. Few years later, when I went back, Carl was right there, but he was stretched out. And I went to pet him, except it wasn't him, and he bit me and wouldn't let go. I wonder if people can be part of the Dogscape too. I miss Carl. Log 7. No, not even. Log 6. All is one in the new truth. The dog mother is vast beyond imagining and requires many to be kept comfortable and clean. We chosen do not go unrewarded, however. In her vast wisdom, the matriarch gives all we need. we supped from her vast heap. A heart of, I don't know, dude, look at me. A hearty meal unlike any other. It invigorates and nourishes us canistodians, and gives us more than we could have ever wished. The time soon approaches, though, to find new workers. The metamorphosis is upon many of us, and soon we will join with the glory of the dog mound. We are so different from the others as they shuffle about down the Foetal groves. Many of us have a thick coat already, and old Lawrence has already begun to walk on all fours. Soon we will shed our mortal selves and be a part of the dog mother, our mother. What the hell is this story? It's been 3 years and 2 weeks now since I met another human being. I know because I've cut a small notch in my left leg for every day, one on my left arm for every week, and one on my right arm for every year. Admittedly, not the most effective way of keeping track of time, but when I started, I figured I'd be dead or this would be over before it really mattered. Like I said, I haven't met any other people for a while, but I figured I would write this anyways, just in case, as a warning to others that might be out there. I ran into something terrible today. Well, the whole dogscape is terrible, but I meant more terrible. I think even among the dogscape it's some sort of crazy abomination, since the feral dogs and ground mouths don't seem too fond of it either. That screaming is not something I ever hope to hear again. That's not the beginning. I'm sorry about this. The blood I'm using really doesn't come off the paper, and I can't waste any by throwing it away, and not even thinking about talking to people for years has made me sort of bad at thinking in a straight line, but I'll try. Let me start over at the beginning. The day started normally. It was my weekly gathering day, so I left my tent. By the way, I left a tent at the pillar of the dogs in the direction of the setting sun if you want it, but you probably won't because the skin has gone bad by now. To collect the dog fruits I would need for the week and fill a bag or two with milk. But when I got to the place where there should have been teats, there was just a bloody mess where someone had dug deep into the flesh of the dogscape. I really didn't think much of it at first, just that I would need to go looking for a new source of milk, and then I saw it. I thought it was another person at first. If I had stopped to really look, if I had stopped to really look first, I wouldn't have had any problems. I wouldn't be writing this right now. I started shouting something to get its attention, and I did, but it turned to me, and I realized I had made a huge mistake. Thinking back, the really long arms and the twisted body probably should have been my first clue, but I didn't really see that anything was wrong until it turned towards me and I saw what I thought was a head. It was just a featureless lump of flesh. Its arms unfolded outwards, each arm ending in two canine legs, and the human face on its chest opening its mouth and started screaming. I figured it was bad news then and made a mad dash for the nearest pillar of dogs, but it kept running after me. It was much faster. Somehow I managed to make it and started scrambling to climb out of its reach. I didn't get very far before there was a sharp pain in my leg, and I looked down and saw it bitten me with one of the many canine mouths along the arm. I screamed as it pulled me down, but that didn't do much, and I probably would have died right then if it weren't for what happened next. Out of nowhere, a mouth I didn't even see when I started climbing the dog pillar bit down on it, and then went on the ground, and they started chewing on it, but it really didn't seem to hurt it, and they let it all go. I ran fast as I could, but I can hear the screaming long after I was out of sight. I didn't sleep that night. Just before nightfall tonight, I felt like I had to make sure the dogscape had killed it and went to the pillar, but I saw no trace of it. The notebook I tore this paper from was there, and I took that. So now here I am. I'm not going to stay around here any longer after I finish this, but finding this notebook made me think that there are other people, and if so, maybe I should warn them about things like this. So if you're reading this, good luck. Oh, also, I'm moving in the direction of the rising sun, so if you read this, you're probably another person. So if you go that direction, maybe we can meet up and be a little better off than we are now. Galactic calendar, year 100, day 1. We have arrived at the closest star system from our previous home. Our world was ravaged by war, and we continued through space as nomads. We have searched for a hospitable world and find this one to be to our liking. We had received signals from this planet that date back to at least 700 of its rotations around their star. If they are anything like us, then generations surely have changed here. As we approached, I am puzzled, for the planet appears much different than our records indicate. The planet is a brown color, not blue, and it appears to be alive on its own. We will send a team down and investigate. Our ship reached orbit around a planet's singular moon. Then we gave the crew a final review of the information we knew about the people of this world. Our main source of communication we received was a form of signals they called television. Our understanding of the language will no doubt appear primitive to the dwellers below. Though personally I feel that something is odd. We lost all communications from this world recently. The captain assumes it was because of their switching to a higher technology. They always talked about their newest technology looks more and more like a race that could enter that of other spacefaring peoples. I am to go down with the rest of the team by the next day on the planet, though I watch the now brown world and feel that something is wrong, terribly wrong. I don't know how many days it's been since I saw the last human. It's hard for the remaining survivors of the Dogscape. Women have all gone and only a handful of men remain. But as I said, it's been days since we saw the last one. I wandered the furry fields looking for a teat patch when I stumbled across something both horrifying yet wonderful at the same time. I looked down at what appeared to be a patch of both male and female reproductive dog organs. I stared fascinated as they endlessly paired with each other. I should have known to look away, but I just couldn't. After a while, watching them endlessly breed, they seemed to stop. It appeared they'd finally sensed me. I almost felt bad for interrupting, so I started to walk away, but I felt something grab a hold of my leg. I looked down to see a mutated dog paw holding tightly to my pant leg. I tried to pull my leg from the grass, but it held on. Then, to my horror, it started pulling me to the middle of the organ patch. I frantically began to fight to get loose, for I knew what it wanted. More dogs sprouted up and pulled on me. I knew I didn't stand a chance. I knew I would join with Dog Mother in the end, so I accepted my fate. At least I would die happy. While archaic, tribal worship of the Dog Mother in its all visible and fleshy glory is the most common form of religion in the barbaric Dogscape, there does exist another mythology. One practiced only in distant, isolated pockets and by a few of the other older survivors. The exact details change from tribe to tribe, year to year, but the basics never change. It is the legend of the beginning of the Dogscape, the genesis of the world we know. It tells of a time when humans were plentiful and walked upon ground that wasn't alive. There's a god, or a demon perhaps. A dog that lived among the humans was even accepted and provided by a family, A dog that lived amongst the humans was even accepted and provided for by a human family, but it was no ordinary dog. This beast lived for over 50 years, while canines of the time rarely lasted more than a decade. It was greatly powerful, more in control of its owner family than they were of it. They say it went out at night and hunted human prey, bringing back large collections of bones as trophies to its home. The humans tried to ignore it, convincing themselves that it wasn't a problem. Soon enough, though, as the origin dog reached a century of age, it became increasingly powerful and unlike others. More strange appearances and even attacks during the day. Vehicles were found with deep bite marks through the metal, and homes were burrowed into from below. The government of the time, many times more powerful than any chieftain of today, captured the hellhound. They performed experiments trying to understand where it channeled its energy from. Progress was good. It looked as though even the secret to immortality could be gained from this dog. But accidents occurred. The betrayer, as they called her, who worked at the government facility, felt sympathy for the god dog. She released him. Concurrently, the all-consuming hell that is Dogscape. The enraged beast no longer held any sympathy for humanity. As it thrashed recklessly through the lab, mutated samples adhered to its flesh, growing like a cancer. Soon what would become Dogscape was spreading like wildfire, its maw gnashing at everything that moved, tide spreading over soil, stone, and sea. What is the name of this horrible demon? It varies, but they all come from a very similar etymological origin, I believe. I've taken down names from all over the world: Armad, Miarm, Aduk, and yet the dog mother is most certainly feminine. Well, it's said that the betrayer, in fact, the first human assimilated into the Dogscape. It's cold here. Jets of moist breath dot the landscape amid undulating hills. There are no proper dog trees, only short piles of huddling dog limbs. Teats are few and far between, and when I find one, I must work to coax the milk into a skin bladder. I move across the hills, my feet numb through the shoes that I have fashioned. I move in the direction of what seems easiest, a subtle and mangy slope that I only just noticed was guiding my path in a general downhill fashion. Where there is fur, it is thick and rancid with matted oil. I don't know why the mother does what it does, but all of her fruits have their uses. I hack at a fur clump, separating it from the flesh below. There is only a little blood from a grazed skin tag. I fold and shape the waxy fur into the insulating hairy coverings on my body. The dog flesh rumbles beneath me in a more than disconcerting way. It has been doing that for the past several weeks, more so the further I had traveled. It's getting colder. I can hear only the wind now, tearing across the mother. The howls, warbling and mournful, have stopped. The sharp dog barks and yips, no longer from a form of background cacophony. I huddle into my coverings and shoulder ahead. I have no path to follow but forward. The ground feels harder here. The gentle give of the dogland has ceased, giving way to a dull sound, absorbing thud of matted fur. I slipped yesterday on what seems to be a lake of solid piss. It was not reabsorbed into the mother. My own shivering seemed to syncopate with the occasional rumblings of the mother. Her flesh no longer seemed like a living being, but I know that deep within her the blood flows. It's so cold here. I'm so weak and it's so cold. My filled bladders of blood are gone, and the gray dogscape stretches before me. I must make it to my goal, but I do not know what my goal is. I have walked for what seems like months in the darkness. I climb down a huge mass of frigid dog flesh. It's like a great heap of small dogs, a pile of dog head and legs, and a mound of tail and torsos. It is cold and lifeless. A slow, low creaking can be heard deep within it. I grip an ear and lower myself to the bottom of the wall of dog. As my foot lands on something else, I gasp, then get caught in a fit of coughing. I don't know what I'm standing on, but it is not the mother. I feel queasy, nauseous. What could possibly be not the mother? It's frigid and hard, but I scrape at it, and bits of dandery coldness come up off of it. I hold them close to my face, and my breath turns the stuff to water. I tried to eat a handful of it, but it's so cold it robs me of all my remaining energy. The moisture trickles down my throat. It is good. I look behind me at the dog wall, with its exposed frozen bones and happy-looking faces, then ahead of me at the featureless dark. I am far too gone to turn back now. I continue walking for hours, then sleep, and I walk more. My footsteps are leaden. Ahead of me, finally, I see light. I make my way towards it, slowly over the course of several hours. It's a beacon to me now. Bright, glowing, steady fire. As I approach, I see that the guiding light stands on a pole before a series of low, dark structures. They are like solid walls of bone, but not. They are not of dog flesh. The billowing hair and cold dandery water pile against the sides. I know this is what I was destined for. At one end, near the light, is a dark panel set into the wall. On it are markings placed there by some person's hand, but I don't know what they mean. AIS-1 and entrance. I shoulder against the panel, but it barely shudders. I try again and again. I am renewed with purpose by the discovery of this place, but I am weak from my travel. I lean my back to the panel and slide down exhausted. My back catches a low bar set into the panel, pushes it down, and clicks. The panel gives way, and I fall into the darkness within. I'm in a small, dark, dry cave. It is alien to me. The wind blows debris and fur into the room with me. I look around. Strange dark masses seem to leer at me. There are soft white skins hanging on the walls and more of the unusual markings everywhere. Procedure list, and keep closed, and warning, and wear radio at all times. A bright red cylinder with yellow stripes is inside a small box. I reach for it, but my hands scramble against a clear covering across the entrance to the box. I look at my hands now. They are purple, and I cannot feel them anymore. Another panel is on the opposite wall, like the one I had opened. I move towards it feebly. I'm so cold. I pull on the handle set into the panel, but it does not move. Small red light flashes above it. I pull harder, but it does not move. I pull again, jumping but losing my balance, and lurch to the ground. I smack my head with a dull thud. The cold is blowing in fiercely from the opening behind me. I scrape against the hard panel, but it will not move. More markings adorn it. Close outer door first. I don't understand them. I sit against the panel. My vision is blurry, and a trickle of my own blood seeps across my eyes. I go to sleep there, leaning across the dark doorway. I sleep and do not wake up. Epilogue. My name is Charles Montel, of Arctic Ice Station 1. The abomination is not here. It is too cold. Tigger and I are the last survivors. We are 14 nautical miles south of the North Pole, directly north of Vancouver. Triangulate our position based on this radio signal. This message will repeat in 5 minutes. The radio broadcast the message again, as it had thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of times. A cold, desiccated body sat huddled before the radio systems in a chair. At its feet lay the curled, dead body of a mutt. Post number 1, September 7th, 2010. Okay, that was a great start. Okay, /X, I need your help with this. This is not copy pasta, this is a long read, but I feel like my safety or well-being could very well depend on this. This is video game related, specifically Majora's Mask, and this is the creepiest shit that's ever happened to me in my entire life. Having said that, I recently moved into my dorm room starting as a sophomore in college, and a friend of mine gave me his old Nintendo 64 to play. I was stoked, to say the least. I could finally play all those old games of my youth that I didn't touch in at least a decade. His Nintendo 64 came with one yellow controller and a rather shoddy copy of Super Smash Bros. And while beggars can't be choosers, needlessly to say, it didn't take long before I came bored of beating up level 9 CPUs. That weekend I decided to drive around a few neighborhoods about 20 minutes or so off campus, hitting up the local garage sales, hoping to score some good deals from ignorant parents. I ended up picking up a copy of Pokemon Stadium, GoldenEye, fuck yeah, F-Zero, and 2 other controllers for $2. Satisfied, I began to drive out of the driveway while one last house caught my attention. Still have no idea why it did. There were no cars there, and only one table was set up with random junk on it, but something sort of drew me there. I usually trust my gut on these things, so I got out of the car and was greeted by an old man. His outward appearance was, for lack of a better word, displeasing. It was odd if you asked me to tell you why I thought he was displeasing, but I really couldn't pinpoint anything. There was just something about him that put me on edge. I can't explain it. All I can say is that if it wasn't in the middle of the afternoon and there were other people within shouting distance, I would not have thought of approaching this guy. He flashed a crooked smile at me and asked what I was looking for, and I immediately noticed that he must have been blind in one of his eyes. His right eye had that sort of glazed-over look about it. I forced myself to look into his left eye instead, trying not to offend, and asked him if he had any old video games. I was already wondering how I can politely excuse myself from the situation when he would tell me he had no idea what a video game was, but to my surprise, he said he had a few ones in an old box. He assured me that he'd be back in a jiffy, and turned his head back into the garage. As I watched him hobble away, I couldn't help but notice that what he was selling on his table. Littered across his table were rather peculiar paintings, various artworks that looked like ink blots that a psychiatrist might show you. Curious, I looked through them. It was obvious why no one was visiting this guy's garage sale. These weren't exactly aesthetically pleasing. As I came to the last one, for some reason it looked almost like Majora's Mask, the same heart-shaped body with little spikes protruding outward. Initially, I just thought that, since I was sincerely hoping to find that game at these garage sales. Some Freudian bullshit was projecting itself onto the ink blots, but given the events that happened afterwards, I'm not so sure now. I should have asked the man about it. I wish I asked the man about it. After staring at the Majora-shaped blot, I looked up and the old man was suddenly there again, arm's length in front of me, smiling at me. I'll admit I jumped out of reflex and laughed nervously as he handed me a Nintendo 64 cartridge. It was the standard gray color, except that someone had written Majora on it in black permanent marker. I got butterflies in my stomach as I realized what a coincidence this was and asked him how much he wanted for it. The old man smiled at me and told me that I can have it for free and that it used to belong to a kid who was about my age who didn't live there anymore. There's something weird about how the way he said it, but I didn't really pay any attention to it then. I was too caught up in not only finding this game, but getting it for free. I reminded myself to be a bit skeptical since this looked like a pretty shady cartridge and there's no guarantee that it would work, but then the optimist inside me interjected that maybe it was some kind of beta version or pirated version of the game. Then that was all I needed to be back on Cloud 9. I thanked the man, and the man smiled at me and wished me well, saying, "Bye then." At least that's what it sounded like to me. All the way in the car ride home, I had a nagging doubt that the man had said something else. My fears were confirmed when I booted up the game. To my surprise, it actually worked fine. There was just one save file simply named Ben. Goodbye, Ben. He had said, "Goodbye, Ben," not then. I felt bad for the man, obviously a grandparent and obviously going a little senile. I, for some reason or another, reminded him of his grandson, Ben. Out of curiosity, I looked at the save file. Eyeballing it, I could tell he was pretty far in the game. He had almost all the masks and 3/4 the remains of the bosses. I noticed that he had used an owl statue to save his game, and he was on day 3 and by the stone-towered temple with hardly an hour left before the moon would crash. I remember thinking it was a shame that he had come so close to beating the game but never finished it. I made a new file named Link out of tradition and started the game, ready to relive my childhood. For such a shady-looking game cartridge, I was impressed by how smoothly it ran, literally just like a retail copy of the game save, for a few minor hiccups there and here, like textures being where they shouldn't be, random flashes of cutscenes at odd intervals, but nothing too bad. However, the only thing that was a little unnerving was that at times the NPCs would call me Link, and at other times they would call me Ben. I figured it was just a bug, a fluke in the programming causing our files to get mixed up or something. It did kind of creep me out, though, after a while, and it was around after I'd beaten the Woodfall Temple that I regrettably went into the save files and deleted Ben, for I intended to preserve the file just out of respect to the game's original owner, and it's not like I needed 2 files anyway, hoping that would resolve the issue. It did, and it didn't. Now NPCs wouldn't call me anything. Where my name should have been in the dialogue, there was just a blank space. My saved name file was still called Link, though. Frustrated and with homework to do, I put the game down for a day. I started playing the game again last night, getting the lens of truth and working my way towards completing the Snowhead Temple. Now, some of you more hardcore Majora's Mask players know about the fourth day glitch. For those who don't, you can Google it, but the gist of it is that right as the clock is about to hit 0 on the final day, you talk to the astronomer and look through the telescope. If you time it right, the countdown disappears, and you essentially have another day to finish whatever you're doing. Deciding to do the glitch to try and finish the Snowhead Temple, I happened to get right on the first try, and the time counter at the bottom disappeared. However, when I pressed B to exit the telescope, instead of being greeted by the astronomer, I found myself in the Majora boss fight room at the end of the game, the trippy boxed-in area, staring at Skull Kid hovering above me. There was no sound, just him floating in the air above me and the background music, which was regular for the area, but still creepy. Immediately, my palms began to sweat. This is definitely not normal. Skull Kid never appeared here. I tried moving around the area, and no matter where I went, Skull Kid would always be facing me, looking at me, not saying anything. Nothing would happen, though, and this kept up for around 60 seconds. I thought the game had bugged or something, but I was beginning to doubt that very much. I was going to reach for the reset button when text appeared on the screen. You're not sure why, but apparently had a reservation. I instantly recognized that text. You get that message when you get to the room key from Anju at the Stockpot Inn, but why was it playing here? I refused to entertain the notion that it was almost as if the game was trying to communicate with me. I started to navigate the room again, testing to see if it was some sort of trigger that enabled me to interact with something here. Then I realized how stupid I was to even think that someone could reprogram the game like this was absurd. Sure enough, 15 seconds later, another message appeared on the screen, and again, like the first one, it was already a pre-existing phrase. Go to the lair of the temple's boss. Yes? No? I paused for a second, contemplating what should I press and how the game would react. When I realized that I couldn't select no. Taking a deep breath, I pressed yes, and the screen faded to white, and with the words, Dawn of a New Day, with a subtext, I beneath it. Where I was ported to filled me with the most intense sense of dread and impending fear that I had ever experienced. The only way I can describe the way I felt here is having the feeling of inexplicable depression on a profound scale. I'm normally not a depressed person, but the way I felt here was a feeling that I didn't know even existed. It was such a twisted, powerful presence that seemed to wash over me. I appeared in some kind of weird Twilight Zone version of Clocktown. I walked out of the clock tower as you normally do when you start from day one, only to find that all the inhabitants were gone. Usually with a fourth day glitch, you could still find the guards and the dogs that run around outside the tower. This time they were all gone, though. What replaced them was the ominous feeling that there was something out there in the same area as me, and it was watching me. I had 4 hearts to my name and the hero's bow, but at this point I wasn't even considered for my avatar. I felt that I personally was in some kind of danger. Perhaps the most chilling thing was the music. It was the song of healing ripped straight from the game itself, but played in reverse. The music would get louder, building up so as if you should expect something to pop out at you, but never did, and the constant loop began to wear on my mental state. Every now and then I would hear the faint laugh of the happy mask salesman in the background, just quiet enough that I wasn't sure if I was hearing things, but loud enough to keep me determined to find them. I looked in all 4 zones of Clocktown only to find nothing. No one. Textures were missing. West Clocktown had me walking on air. The entire area felt broken, hopelessly broken. As the reverse song of healing repeated for what must have been the 50th time, I just remember standing in the middle of South Clocktown, realizing that I had never felt so alone in a video game before. As I walked through the ghost town, I don't know whether it was a combination of the out-of-place textures and the atmosphere and the haunting melody of the once peaceful and soothing song being butchered and distorted, but I was literally on the verge of tears, and I had no idea why. I hardly ever cry. Something had gripped me here in this powerful sense of depression that was both foreign and crippling. I tried leaving Clocktown, but every time I attempted to zone out, the screen would fade to black and I would just zone into another part of Clocktown. I tried playing my ocarina. I wanted to escape, and I did not want to be here, but every time I played the Song of Time or the Song of Soaring, it would only say, your notes echo far, but nothing happens. By this point, it was obvious the game didn't want me to leave, but I had no idea why it was keeping me here. I didn't want to go inside the buildings. I felt it would be too vulnerable there to whatever I was terrified of. I don't know why, but I came up with the idea that maybe if I drowned myself at the laundry pool, I could spawn somewhere else and leave the space. As I zoned in and ran towards the pool, that's when it happened. Link grabbed his head, and the screen flashed for a brief moment of the happy masked salesman smiling at me. Not Link, me, with Skull Kid's scream playing in the background, and then the screen returned. And when the screen returned, I was staring at the Link statue from playing this song, Elegy of Emptiness. I screamed at the thing, just stared back at me with that haunting facial expression. I turned around and ran out and back into South Clocktown, and to my horror, the fucking statue followed me. The only way I can compare is like the weeping angels from Doctor Who. Every so often, at random intervals, the animation would play of the statue appearing behind me. It was like the thing was chasing me, or I don't even want to fucking say it, haunted me. By this point, I was on the verge of hysterics, but not even once did the thought of turning off the console occur to me. I don't know why. I was just so wrapped up in it. The terror felt so real. I tried to shake the statue, but it would literally appear right behind me every single turn. Link started to make weird animations I'd never seen him do before. He would flail his arms around or spasm randomly, and the screen would cut to the happy mask salesman smiling again for a brief moment before I was face to face with that fucking statue again. I ended up running into the swordsman's dojo and ran to the back. I don't know why, but in my panic I just wanted some kind of assurance that I'm not alone here. To my dismay, I found no one here, but as I turned to leave, the statue cornered me in the cubby in the back. I tried attacking the statue with my sword, but to no avail. Confused and backed into a corner, I just stared at the statue, waiting for it to kill me. Suddenly, the screen flashed again to the happy mask salesman, and Link turned to face my screen, standing upright, mirroring the statue, looking at me along with his copy, literally staring at me. Whatever was left of the fourth wall was completely shattered while I ran out of the dojo terrified. Suddenly the game warped me to an underground tunnel, and the reverse Song of Healing queued up again as I was giving a brief moment of rest before the statue started appearing behind me again, this time aggressively. I could only take a few steps before it would summon behind me again. I hurriedly made my way out of the tunnel and appeared in southern Clocktown yet again. As I ran aimlessly in a sheer panic, suddenly a re-dead screamed, and the screen faded to black as Dawn of the New Day and I appeared again. The screen faded in, and I was standing on top of the clock tower with Skull Kid hovering over me again, silent. I looked up and the moon was back, looming just meters above my head. But the Skull Kid just stared at me hauntingly with that fucking mask. A new song was playing, the Stone Tower Temple theme playing in reverse. Some sort of desperate attempt. I equipped my bow and fired off a shot at the Skull Kid. I actually hit him, and he played an animation of him reeling back. I fired again, and on the third arrow, a text box appeared saying, "That won't do you any good." And I was picked up off the ground, levitated upwards on my back, and then Link screamed as he burst into flames, instantly killing him. I jumped when this happened. I've never seen this move used by anyone in the game, and the Skull Kid himself didn't have any moves. As the death screen played, my lifeless body still burning, the Skull Kid laughed, and the screen faded to black, only to have me reappear in the same place. I decided to charge him, but the same thing happened. Link's body was lifted off the ground by some unknown force, and he immediately burst into flames, again killing him. This time, during the death screen, the faint sounds of the reverse Song of Healing could be heard. On my third and final try, I noticed that there was no music playing this time, that all there was eerie silence. I remember the original encounter with the Skull Kid. You were supposed to use the ocarina to either travel back in time or summon the giants. I attempted to play the Song of Time, but before I could hit the last note, Link's body once again horrifically exploded into flames and he died. As the death screen neared its end, it began to chug as if the cartridge was trying to process a lot of something. When the screen came to, it was the same scene as the first 3 times, except this time Link was lying on the ground, dead, in a position I've never seen in the game before, his head tilted towards the camera, with the Skull Kid floating above him. I couldn't move, I couldn't press any buttons, all I could do was just stare at Link's dead body. After around 30 seconds of this, the game simply fades out with a message, "You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you?" before kicking me out to the title screen. Upon getting back to the title screen and starting again, I noticed my save file was no longer there. Instead of Link, it was replaced with Your Turn. Your Turn had 3 hearts, 0 masks, and no items. I selected Your Turn, and immediately when I did, I was returned to the Clock Town rooftop scene of my Link dead and the Skull Kid hovering over, with the Skull Kid's laughing looping again and again. I quickly hit the reset button, and when the game booted up again, there was one more save file added below Your Turn, entitled Ben. Ben's save file is right back where it was before I deleted it, at the Stone Tower Temple with the moon almost crashing. I turned off the game at that point. I'm not superstitious, but this is way fucked up, even for me. I haven't played it at all today. I didn't get any sleep last night. I kept hearing the reverse song of healing music in my head and just remembering the sense of dread I felt exploring Clocktown. I drove back to the old man's house today to ask him some questions with a buddy of mine. No way I was going alone, only to find that there's a for sale sign in the front yard, and when I rang the door, no one was home. So I'm back here writing down the rest of my thoughts and recording what happened. Sorry if some of this has grammatical errors and whatnot. I'm running on no sleep here. I'm terrified of this game, even more so now that I relived it a second time, writing all this down. But I feel there's more to it than meets the eye. And there's something calling to me to investigate this further. I think Ben is something in this equation. I don't know what, and if I could get a hold of the old man, that I would be able to find some answers. I need another day or so to recuperate before tackling this game again. It's already taken a toll on my sanity, I feel like. Next time I do this, I'm going to be recording my footage all the way through. The idea to record only came to me towards the end, as you see the last few minutes of what I saw, including Skull Kid and the Elegy statue, but it's on YouTube here. I'm going to stay in this thread for a little while longer before I fall asleep to answer any questions you guys might have, or hopefully listen to your ideas or theories to help me shed some light onto this, or maybe things I should try to do. I think I'm going to play Ben's file tomorrow to see what happens. Maybe I was supposed to do that all along. I don't believe in paranormal shit, but this is a little fucked up. Maybe this Ben guy is a really good hacker / programmer. I don't want to think about the alternatives if he isn't. That's the end of the copy pasta. That's the end of the copy-paste. I'm hoping that maybe this is some sort of running gag the developers had and that the other people have gotten gag or hack copies of this game as well. This just really scares me. Post number 2. I'm going to post what happened and link the video footage, but last night everything got too real for me. I think I'm done messing around with this. Passed out pretty much immediately after making that thread, but last night that Elegy of Emptiness statue, I had a dream about it. I dreamed that it was following me in my dreams, that I would be minding my own business when I'd feel the neck hairs stand up on end. I would turn around and that horrible, lifeless statue would be staring with those empty eyes right at me, merely inches away. My dream, I remember calling it Ben, and never before had I had a dream I could remember so vividly. But the most important thing I did is get some sleep, I suppose. Today, I'm putting off playing the game as long as I could. I drove back up to the neighborhood to see if that old man came back. As I expected, the car was still gone and no one was home. As I was walking back to my car, the man next door mowing the grass killed the power on his lawnmower and asked me if I was looking for someone. I told him that I was looking to talk to the old man that lived here, to which he told me that what I already knew. He was moving. Trying a different avenue, I asked if the old man had any family or relatives I could talk to. I discovered that This old man had never been married, nor had he had any children or grandchildren through adoption. Starting to become worried, I asked one final question, one that I should have asked from the beginning. Who was Ben? The man's expression turned grim, and I learned that 4 doors down, around 8 years ago, on April the 23rd, the man informed me that this was the same day as his anniversary. That's how I knew the specific date. There was an accident with a young boy named Ben in the neighborhood. Shortly after, his parents moved, and despite any further attempts to talk the man into giving me more information, he wouldn't divulge anything else. I went back and started playing again. I loaded up the game and immediately jumped at the title screen where the mask flies by. The sound that played was not the normal whoosh sound. It was something far higher pitched. I pressed start, bracing for the worst, but just like 2 nights ago, the files Your Turn and Ben were displayed. Truth be told, when I looked at the Ben file earlier, it seemed to fluctuate between displaying the owl save and not. I brought up the Ben file, hesitated for a moment, noticing that the stats were not the same as they were originally 2 days ago. It seems like he had already completed the Stone Tower Temple this time. Summoning my courage, I selected it. Immediately, I was thrust into complete chaos. Sure enough, I was outside Stone Tower Temple, but that's about all that was expected. The zone itself wasn't called Stone Tower Temple, but instead STON-E. Immediately, a dialogue box of complete gibberish that I couldn't make out greeted me. Link's body was distorted. His back was cocked violently to the side, where his posture was permanently disfigured. Link's expression was dull, almost monotonous. He had an expression on his face that I didn't recognize before. It was a blank look, as if he was dead. As Link stood there, his body spasmed irregularly back and forth. I examined what became of my avatar and noticed that the C button item I have never seen before. Some kind of note, but pressing it did nothing. Sounds played back and forth that I didn't recognize from the game, almost demonic in nature, and there was some kind of high-pitched yip or some kind of laugh or something playing in the background. I had all of 2 minutes to take in the environment before another one of those fucking Elegy of Emptiness statues was summoned, and immediately I was cut into the Dawn of a New Day screen, except this time without that I subtext. I was a Deku scrub in Clocktown. The scene would normally play after the first time you traveled back in time. Tatiel would say, "What just happened?" It's as if everything else has. But instead of saying, "Started over," she finished her remark in broken text as the laugh of the happy mask salesman played in the background. I was put back in control of my character, but from a fucked up camera angle. I was looking from behind the door to the clock tower, watching my avatar run around as a Deku scrub. Seeing as I really had no place to go because I couldn't see anything, I begrudgingly went inside the door. There I was greeted by the happy mask salesman, who simply told me, "You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you?" before the screen whited out. I was in Termina Field as a human again. Might as well not have been playing the same game anymore. I was being warped around and there was no sign of a day clock or anything. I took a moment to get my bearings as I looked around the field, and immediately I could tell that this was not normal. There were no enemies, and a twisted version of the Happy Mask Salesman's theme was playing. I decided to run towards Woodfall before I noticed a gathering of 3 figures off to the left, one of them being Epona. As I approached them, to my horror, I saw the Happy Mask Salesman, the Skull Kid, and the Elegy of Emptiness statue just standing there. I figured maybe they were bugged out, but now I told myself that I should have known better. Nevertheless, I approached them carefully and found that the Skull Kid was playing some kind of idle animation on loop. Same with Epona, and the Elegy of Emptiness statue was doing what it had been doing all along, just standing there eerily. It was the Happy Mask Salesman that scared me more profoundly than the other two. He too was idle, wearing that shit-eating grin, but wherever I moved, his head slowly turned and followed me. I had not engaged in any dialogue with him, nor was I in combat with him, yet his head still continued to follow my movements. Reminded of my first encounter with a skull kid on top of Clock Tower, I pulled out my ocarina, to which the game played the ding sound when you're supposed to play your ocarina, and I tried a song I hadn't played yet, the Happy Mask Salesman owned song, and the song that had played on loop back in day 4, the Song of Healing. I finished playing the song, and as I did, an ear-piercing shriek blasted on my TV. The sky immediately started flashing. The Happy Mask Salesman twisted theme song sped up, intensifying the fear inside me, and Link exploded into flames and died again. The three figures stayed lit up during my death scene. Oh my god. The three figures stayed lit up during my death screen as they watched my lifeless body burn. I can't describe to you with how sudden and terrifying the transition to eerie to terror it is. You're gonna have to watch the video if you want to see firsthand. That same fear that caused me to lose sleep 2 days ago started to grip me again as I was met with a text. You've met with a horrible fate, haven't you? For the 3rd time. There has to be some kind of meaning behind that. I had little time to ponder as I was immediately given another small cutscene of transforming into a Zora, and now I found myself in Great Temple Bay. Hesitant but curious to see what the game had in store for me, I slowly made my way towards the beach where I found Epona. I wondered why the game had decided to put her here. Was the game implying she was trying to get her drink? Unable to take the mask off, I decided that riding the steed wasn't the reason she was placed there. Suddenly I realized that Epona had kept neighing, and the way she was angled made it look like she was trying to signal a point to me off in the distance. It was a hunch, but I dove into Great Bay and started swimming. Sure enough, I almost missed it. I found something at the bottom of the ocean. One last Elegy of Emptiness statue. I went down to examine it, and suddenly my Zora started doing a choking animation I've never seen a Zora do before, which didn't even make sense because Zoras can breathe underwater. Regardless, my character choked to death and died, and again the statue was the only thing that was highlighted in my death. I didn't respawn this time. I was booted back to the main menu as I restarted the console. The press start screen was before me. I knew the only reason why it would put me here is because the same files have changed again. Taking a deep breath, I pressed start, and I was right. The new save files told me about Ben. Now it made sense why the statue appeared when I tried to go to the laundry pool. The game must have anticipated how I would try to escape the Day 4 clock town. The 2 save files told me his fate. As I suspected, Ben was dead. He had drowned. The game obviously isn't through with me. It taunts me with the new save files. It wants me to keep playing, to keep going further, but I'm done with this shit. I'm not touching any more of those files. It's already way too horrifying for me. I don't believe in the paranormal, but I am running out of explanations. Why would someone send me this message? I don't understand it. I just get too depressed thinking about it. The footage is up here for those who want to see it and try and analyze it. I know it's early in the morning. By the way, post 3, September 10th, 2010. I know it's early in the morning. I've stayed up all night. I can't sleep. I don't care if people see this. That's not the point. I just want the word to get spread so I don't have to suffer for nothing. I've lost the will to type about this. The less I dwell on this, the better. I think the video just speaks for itself. I did what you guys told me to do. I played the Elegy of Emptiness song at the first prompt by the game I was given, but I think that's what the game, or Ben, Jesus Christ, I don't even know why I'm humoring the absurd idea that he exists in the game, wanted me to do. He's following me now, not just in the game, he's in my dreams. I see him all the time, behind my back, just watching me. I haven't gone to any of my classes. I've stayed in my dorm room with the windows closed and the blinds shut. That way I know he can't watch me, but he still gets me to play. Gets me to play when he can still see me. The game is scaring me now. It talked to me for the first time, not just using text that's already in the game. It spoke to me, talked to me. It referenced Ben. It talked to me. I don't know what that means. I don't know what it wants. I never wanted this. I just want my old life back. Stuff like this doesn't happen to people like me. I'm just a kid, not even old enough to drink yet. It's not fair. I want to go home. I want to see my parents again. I'm so far from home here at this school, I just want to hug my mom again. I just want to forget that statue's horrible blank face. My original game file is back. just the way I left it before it was gone. I don't want to play anymore. I feel like something bad will happen if I don't, but that's impossible. It's a video game. Haunted or not, it can't hurt me, right? Like, seriously, though, it can't, right? That's what I keep telling myself, but every time I think about it again, I'm not sure. Post number 4, September 12th, 2010. Let me just clear things up. I know you guys are worried, but Jaduzable is okay. He finished moving out today, and he said he's going back home. He's just taking this semester off. Not really sure what's happened. I have a vague idea, but you guys probably know more than I do. I'm Jaduzable's roommate, and obviously I knew something was wrong with him for a few days now. He stays in his room all the time, fell out of contact with literally all of his friends, and I'm pretty sure he hadn't been eating hardly anything after the second day. I couldn't stay in there anymore, so I've been crashing at a buddy's place, only coming into my room to get stuff that I need. Tried talking to him several times, but he would cut me off or keep the conversation brief when I asked him about his strange behavior. It was like he was convinced something was haunting him. Yesterday I came to grab my philosophy book, and he approached me looking awful, with horrible bags under his eyes. He handed me a flash drive and gave me specific instructions. He told me that he needs me to do one last favor for him. He finally explained to me what has been going on, gave me the account to his YouTube account, and told me that he's getting away from here, and it lured him to play it again instead of trying to change things, that he shouldn't have done that, to upload the footage and inform people what happened. I told him that he could do it himself, and he got this wild look in his eye and told me that he is never looking at that game again, and that's the last thing he said to me. He never even said bye when his parents came to pick him up. I never even got to meet them. I honestly can't tell you what happened. When he spoke, it was kind of hard to understand him, and his fucked up appearance really distracted me. On the flash drive, there was the footage of the game last night, a text document with his name and a password for YouTube, and a third document called thetruth.txt, containing what he told me were his notes that he'd taken. Told me that this meant everything to him, that I follow his instructions exactly. Normally I wouldn't be so to the letter for a request over a fucking video game, but the way he spoke and the way he looked made me know this was really serious. I'm going to honor that. I've had this video since yesterday, but had to have someone help me use Pinnacle. That's not really my forte. Then after watching, I had to go back through and look at his other videos on YouTube to realize what was going on, and even then I'm really confused. The video I'm releasing tonight, the truth.txt, will be released on September 15th, just like he requested. I haven't dared peek at it yet, so the first time I see it will be the first time you see it out of respect to my friend. To answer your questions, no, I haven't tried calling him yet. I think I might give him a call tomorrow to see if he's okay or not. Should have gotten back home by now. Post number 5, September 15th, 2010. Hey guys, Jaduzable here. This will be the last time you'll be hearing from me, and this is my final gift for you. These are the notes I've taken and the realizations I've made. Before I delve into this, I want to thank you for following me and thank you for listening. It feels like the weight of a powerful burden is about to be lifted. By the time you read this, I won't be around anymore, but after spending 4 days with this maddening game, I've begun to understand what is really at play here, and hopefully after reading this, we can ensure that this never happens again. There are things that I could not share with you while this was going on due to the circumstances which I'll explain. With Ben blocking any attempt I made to try and relay the truth to you, I tried ever so subtly to warn you guys in various ways. Amidst the chaos in my delirium, I devised to make a barely noticeable pattern in my videos. In all 5 videos I recorded over 4 days, I've either had the mask of truth interacting with a gossip stone or the lens of truth equipped at some point. For you Zelda enthusiasts, these are all symbols of honesty and trustworthiness, and I would hope that one of you may have picked up the reference. As I played the file, which I would name Ben, Being mindful of how Ben was watching over my every move in the game, I made a point to avoid doing anything too obvious, but I sent a hidden message to you guys. I never equipped the lens, nor the mask, nor visited a stone. It worked, and the video was uploaded. I prayed that someone would notice the pattern didn't apply to Ben. The tags followed suit too. I hope you guys paid attention to those as well. They were my little messages to you. Nothing big enough that would catch Ben's attention or make him suspect anything. With Ben manipulating and changing my files, I honestly hope that what you guys saw was close to what actually happened, but there's no way for me to know. This may be a long read, but I don't have time to proofread or make all my research pretty, but here it all is. September 6th, 2010, 11 p.m. Can't believe what happened. Not sure if this is some kind of elaborate hoax. Despite the fear, I can't help but be exceptionally curious about this. Who and what is the statue? Lots of questions here. I'm starting this document as a diary so I can keep track of everything. Typing up a summary of what happened so I can come back to it later. September 7th, 2010. 4:23. I can't sleep. I've been trying so hard, but the harder I try, the more I get restless. I just feel like the statue is appearing whenever I close my eyes. 8:20. Didn't sleep at all, just going to start my day. I don't think I have the energy to go to class today, but I'm going to drive back down to talk to that old man, taking my buddy Tyler with me. Back home now, no sign of the old man. Really weird that he appears to be moving the next day, but maybe the for sale sign was up there yesterday. I just didn't notice it. Tyler wants to know what's got me all worked up. I didn't tell him. Going to eat, feel like death. Could have sworn driving back from Subway that I saw the elegy statue buried in some shrubbery staring at me go by. Don't think a lot of people would believe me if I told them what's happening. Think I'm going to try posting this on the internet. Then I'll just use the summary. These notes are pretty sporadic. Connected my capture card to my computer to upload the footage. Thought my computer froze a second, made this strange popping noise when I hooked everything up. It seems to be working fine again. Footage is finished uploading. The quality is a lot better than I thought it would be. Gee, guess this is a really special cartridge. I'd never had it come through this clear before. Thought I saw an icon pop up on my desktop that looked like the statue's face for a split second. Gave me quite a scare. Getting really unnerved and delirious. Gonna crash after this. I began uploading my YouTube video on an alternate account. I don't remember having uploaded a Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines video last year. This is probably the account that I shared with a friend of mine last summer. Posting my summary of day 4 with a link to the YouTube video. So tired right now. September 8th, 2010. I had a dream about the statue. I dreamed that it was following me in my dream, that I would be minding my own business when I'd feel my neck hairs stand up on end. I would turn around and that thing, that horrible, lifeless statue would be staring with those empty eyes right at me, merely inches away. I remember calling it Ben. Power of suggestion, most likely, and never before had I had a dream that I can remember so vividly. I don't really want to play this game again. I'm going to go back to see if the old man's there. No old man, but I had an interesting conversation with his neighbor. I've been getting random, inexplicable headaches due to a lack of sleep and kept hearing that song in my head. Also, it's flu season, so I need to be careful not to get sick. My immune system is going to shit right now because of that all-nighter. My computer just on its own opened up a text document and wrote the words hi and www.cleverbot.com by itself. What the fuck? I went to the website. It's one of those bot chatting programs. I think it's best if I just copy and paste the conversation here. Hello? Cleverbot. Hello. Who is this and how are you able to control my computer? Who am I? Right. Forgot. You're a robot. Do you really think that? Listen, I know whoever's fucking with my computer can see my screen right now. Yes? Yeah, and I'll wager that you're one of those IT kids who thinks he's tough shit. You know what I think you're doing right now is illegal, right? Is it? No shit, are you familiar with the HTE terms invasion of privacy? Get the fuck off my computer, kid. I am your computer. Cool story. Anyway, I'm calling DPS. You picked a bad time to fuck with me, kid. Should I wait until you play the game then? What? That game. Majora's Mask? Yes. How did you know about that? Because. Because what? I did it. Did what? I played with you. What the fuck? Were you scared? Who the fuck is this? Ben? The statue? You're inside my computer now? Yes. What? You connected me. How the hell did I connect you? Cables and cords. How? Tell me about yourself. What? Tell me about yourself. What do you mean? What is it that really scares you? What the fuck? Answer. No, answer. What the fuck? How the fuck did you just open that by yourself? I am your computer now. How much can you control? All. What do you want from me? To entertain. You're stuck inside there. You can't hurt me? Ha. What? Go play. No, you can't hurt me. Took you longer to type that. So? You're not sure. If you're so powerful, why use a ridiculous website like this to chat with me? Less messy, more structured, fun. Fun? Yes, tradition, I like it. You think it's funny? Amusing. And my notes? You may write them down. Why are you letting me? It is amusing to see what you think of me. What have I done? I've invited it into my computer. I continue to write these notes and my summaries. I feel like I'm a prisoner in my one place of security. I don't know. I don't know if I'm hallucinating or not. I feel like I'm fucking insane right now. I can feel it watching over me even as I type this. Ben is controlling everything in the game, toying with me, leading me like a sheep. But for what? What's the purpose? I know Ben drowned, but why these hauntings? Why the fuck am I even doing? I probably can even see this right now. Ben called me to Cleverbot again. He tells me he's sorry and wants to be free. He tells me I can free him. That just like how he got on my computer from the capture cord, he can spread, but he needs my help. He says I'm special because I can help him. That is the first nice thing he said. He promises to leave me alone if I do it. He swears he will. I don't know what to think right now. How can I even trust this thing? Ben, I'm terrified of it, but now it's saying that it was just having fun. It's twisted and fucked up version of fun. He's saying that the game is over. I do want it to be over. He says he just wants to be free, that he's trapped in the cartridge of my computer and he wants to be freed. I don't want to have to deal with this shit. I don't know how long I could deal with the watching. It's watching my every move, every keystroke. I have nothing private anymore. It knows everything that's been on my computer. It tells me if I wanted to, I could do horrible things to me. But it hasn't, so I should trust it. Something tells me that I'm playing again. Like in the game. Ben called me to Cleverbot again. I ignored it and went to go take a shower. When I came back to my laptop, I was welcomed with an image elegy statue staring at me with those dead eyes. I don't want to talk to him. Fuck you, Ben. I'm not talking to you. Fuck you, Ben. I'm not talking. Fuck you, Ben. I'm not talking to you. It's been more than half an hour and the two messages have stopped. Ben has stopped. I'm beginning to think that Ben isn't confined to just my computer cartridge. I'm beginning to feel something. It's hard to explain. I've never been spiritual, but there's something different about the air in my dorm room right now. I'm beginning to see the elegy statue randomly as I search the internet in places I shouldn't, places where he shouldn't be. I'd be scrolling down, suddenly I'm staring at a picture of an elegy statue. Always that statue. I don't know how much more of this I can take. My worst fears are confirmed. Ben has tampered with my summary of ben.dm. What the fuck? Ben has tampered with my summary of ben.wmv. I looked at the summary that I posted on various forums for the ben.wmv file, and parts have been omitted. There's no mention of Ben existing outside the game. There's no mention of the Moon Children. I could have been that quick to delete the post without me noticing. I'm wondering if maybe it appeared to me that I was posting everything, but in reality, Ben was posting his own censored version. Going to ask Ben why he did it. He isn't responding me on Cleverbot. I think Ben's mad at me. The Moon Children appeared in my dreams last night. They lifted up their masks to reveal their hideously disfigured faces, maggots crawling out of their orifices, sunken black holes where their eyes should be, a yellow smile that grew bigger and bigger as they grew closer to me. They told me that they wanted to play. I tried to run from them, but the 4 children pinned me down to the ground with surprising strength. Over them stood the Happy Mask salesman, announcing that he had a new mask that he wanted me to try. In his spastic, sudden movements matching his endgame appearance, he took out a mask modeled off of someone's face that I couldn't recognize, a younger-looking face, and handed it to the Moon Children. Giggling, they latched it onto my face, the horrible broken bodies bouncing up and down. 2 of them held me down, while the other 2 began to sew the mask onto my face. My shrieks and screams caused the Happy Mask salesman's face to turn the most horrific smile I've ever seen. He sporadically moved around, examining this procedure like a curious doctor in that impossible moment. After the mask was melded onto my flesh, they began sewing my legs together. In my arms, the horrific feeling of a needle puncturing your legs and pulling them in, rupturing your Achilles tendons and tying them together, resonating throughout my entire body. I tried to scream, but the mask was pressed so tightly against my face that it was my new face, and I had no mouth. I didn't make a sound. I tried telling myself in my head that I was dreaming. I tried telling myself again and again, and suddenly the Moon Children stopped and looked at me. They just stopped. And the Happy Mask salesman slowly bent over and stared at me, inches away from my face, and grinned when he simply said, "You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you?" I couldn't wake up. I wouldn't let me wake up until they crafted me into another elegy statue. I woke up sweating, crying, and shaking uncontrollably. Immediately ran to my computer and typed to Ben. "Answer me, Ben. Welcome back. What is the point of doing this? Why? Amusing to see. How? Fun to play. Fun to toy with you. Make you feel safe. I wondered how you would have reacted. To what? If I hadn't revealed myself and stayed hidden, only doing little things to play with you. Close out your windows. Turn off your computer. Move your mouse by itself. Little things. Make you wonder if I'm there, but you never know. Give you little hints that I am. I wanted to do something different with you. You did this before? Yes, and I will do it again. To who, Ben? Do you know Ben? Won't tell that information to you. How did Ben die? You know. No, but how did he drown? Won't tell that to you. Why? It is reserved for another. Who? Another who asks. When? Later. The window closed. I'm beginning to think that this thing isn't Ben at all. In its sadistic nature, I wouldn't be surprised if it took the name of the boy after it killed him. My room is beginning to feel different again. There's something out there. I really feel threatened. Like there's something else that's trying to reach out to me and strangle me, but it can't quite get there. I think Ben doesn't want to play with me anymore. I'll play again. I'll play the game again, Ben. Can you see this? I'll play the game again. Please just stop this. I'm going insane trying to think, trying to decide what is real and isn't. Is Ben just playing a trick on me, or is this for real? Is Ben generating these replies, or are people actually posting them? Did I just see that screen flicker, or was it my imagination? Imagine depending on the internet and trusting your eyes for your entire life and then being blinded. You can't rely on it anymore. You second-guess everything. For the brief moments I am looking at my responses to the videos, people are pointing out things that look fake or photoshopped or whatever. There's literally no way for me to know if men changed something on purpose to try and shut me up. Or maybe those replies were just constructed by Ben to try and discourage me from even reaching out. See, I get fucking caught in an infinite mindfuck loop like this, and this is what's been wearing on my sanity and pushing me to the edge. As I'm writing this, there's no way of even telling if anyone cares as much as I think they do. Just another fucking trick. Does this whole document even exist? Am I writing nothing? What is it? What's the point of playing? I die whenever I do anything. You die because you can't figure out the secret. What? Thematic. What the fuck are you talking about? Their beauty and your suffering. The window closed. Ben is making me play the game again. It tells me that it has something very important to show me. The drown.wmv playthrough was up when I woke up today. I remember typing it up, but I don't remember posting it. He censored it again. There's no mentioning of the old man. I have no voice anymore. I'm only posting what he wants me to. I am the mask he uses to disguise himself as he lies. There's an entire video summary of a video I don't remember doing. Reading through the summary, this sounds morbid. These moon children, there's something more to them. It's almost as if they're some other entity from Ben. Something happened last night that I can't remember. I'm posting the forced summary to the forums now. Shadow of my chair moved. Ben won't let me visit YouTube. I can browse the rest of the sites, but he keeps exiting the window when I go to YouTube. Why? I'm feeling the air start to constrict. I don't think I'm alone here. Whatever aura has been here is getting more violent. I'm trying to contact Ben on Cleverbot, but he's not responding. My ears aren't fooling me. I'm hearing the reverse song of healing. I just keep hearing it. Now I'm positive of it. Earlier I thought it was a weird coincidence, but now when I went to open my window and 3 floors down at ground level I saw the old man. I'm completely positive I did. The same guy who's staring at the window, staring in the middle of campus. If any students took notice of him, they didn't show it. The sun did not shine. The world was so dark. It felt so cold and so wet. All I could see was darkness. The world started to spin, and I awoke with a start. When I woke, the first thing I noticed was the shattered fishbowl, glass pieces lying everywhere. The fish lay on his side, gasping for air, and the wallpaper was torn. The walls were wet. I ran out of my room to look for my mother, and as I turned the corner, the shocking image of my mother's corpse fell out at me. Gutted and twisted, she was a horrible sight. The patch of fur in her constricted hand stood out to me. An atrocious epiphany hit me. It was the cat's fur. Frantically, I rushed to find Sally in the living room. I saw her hanging from the curtains, also gutted, her entrails spilled onto the floor, hanging like sausages from her body. Maggots and flies swam in and out of her body like people in swimming pools. When I ran out of the house, the sky was dark. The rain was sticky and heavy, like molasses. I looked to the sky and saw my father, a rail spike from our horseshoe set, plunged in his head, sticking him to the roof. The rain was not rain, but my father's blood. I was only standing under the porch when I thought it was raining. I ran to my neighbor's house to seek refuge. I saw the same events had befallen their family. I ran outdoors and ran into the monster. I ran as fast as I could, and again ran into the monster I used to love and cherish. The cat grabbed me and threw me into the wall. I feel the wind get knocked out of me. The taste of blood is appearing in my mouth, and I realize I'm coming close to passing out. As my consciousness flees, I hear the cat whisper to me, "I'm sorry. The hat controls me." The last thing I feel is his hand plunging into my stomach, ripping, tearing into my internal organs, twisting them, pulling them, and then he raises them to his mouth. Then it's over. Have you ever had an experience that suggested someone else was in your house and just thought, "I don't want to know," and left it? Sometimes fear of the unknown just seems like the preferable option than facing a real, concrete danger. Normally it's nothing, though. One time the beeper function on my wireless house phone went off when I was the only one home. I could only be called from the living room. Another time I swear someone took some change from my desk. They're all probably just slightly disconcerting tricks of the memory. But what would you do when something truly suggestive happens? Would you run or just ignore it like I did? Last Monday was a normal day. I got up, brushed my teeth, changed into school clothes, all little parts of my morning ritual. It seemed like it would be another totally unnoteworthy day until I saw the strings. There were 3 or 4 thick twined strings in my room. They crisscrossed between the walls around my bed, one attached to the door. No way would I have missed them before. I should have tripped over them. They were tied to pins in the wall, which had not existed before 10 seconds ago. Nobody could have been in my room while I was in it, let alone set this up. It was early and my brain wasn't processing correctly. I simply discredited the sight, untied the strings, and left for school, leaving them balled up on my desk. It didn't get any better later. Outside my house there were hundreds of them, tied between houses, around cars, across streets. This had to be some really elaborate prank. One of those hidden camera shows or a comedy improv blog. They'd probably gotten everyone else to play along too. Passerbys were tangled in them, tying them to objects they were walking towards and away from, as if they had been and were continuing to following the course laid out for them. I nervously continued my journey to school. On the bus, everyone except for me was tied to the door. At school, groups of friends were tied to each other. Teachers were tied to their desks and boards. Oddly enough, at this point, all I could wonder is, why had I been left out? When my friend Lucy sat beside me in first period, she simply plonked her bag down on my lap and rested her chin on her hand, looking right past me to the window outside. "Hey, Lucy." No response. "Come on, I didn't expect you to be in on this too." She sighed and started taking bags from her books. All the books were tied to her hands. I grinned and yanked one of the strings off a book. She didn't seem to notice, simply disregarding the book completely, letting it drop to the floor without a moment's hesitation. I leaned down, picking up the book and placing it back on her desk. She took no notice. "Well, if that's how we're going to play it." I smiled, trying to look playful, but really just trying to hide my nervousness. I bundled all the strings attached to her together with one hand, then pulled them all free. She blinked, turning to stare at me. "Holy crap, Martin, you're like a ninja or something." "I've been sitting here for like 10 minutes, I smiled again, relieved my friend had finally noticed me. "Where did all these strings come from?" she gasped, seemingly noticed for the first time. "I assumed you were all fucking with me." She stood up, backed into a corner. No one in the class noticed. "They were just here a minute ago. Did you see them too?" Her tone made it clear she was genuinely scared. "No, didn't you?" I was interrupted by my teacher slamming the door behind her. Everyone except me and Lucy murmured a good morning, and still no one seemed to pay attention to any of us. "People have been ignoring me all day," I said to Lucy before turning to our teacher. "Hey, dumb bitch, you can't teach for shit." No reaction. "I'm getting away from all this shit." Lucy pulled a few strings beside and left the class. I followed, and surprise, surprise, no one noticed. We wandered the corridors, leaving and entered classes as we saw fit. Whenever we untied a chair or book for someone else, it was like suddenly it didn't matter to them. It didn't exist. I showed her the street outside. There were more strings than when I came in this morning. Twice as many, at least. We carefully picked our way through the tangle, making our way to a nearby coffee shop. Not particularly grand, I know, but what would you do in our situation? As I said, fear of the unknown sometimes seems like the safer option. On a few occasions I suggested we untie a few more people. Lucy was opposed to it, remembering how terrified she'd been. In the coffee shop we grabbed a couple of sandwiches and drinks from the fridge. We found a table, untied all strings attached to the chairs, and sat down. We both ate in silence, both of us too scared, too distracted by ourselves, watching the strangers in the shop, oblivious to the strings. After 20 minutes, Lucy spoke up. "Now she's going to take that sandwich," she said, pointing at a woman across the shop. Sure enough, she walked to the fridge and took the plastic sandwich she was tied to. She pays for it and leaves. She did so, according to the prophecies of her string. The guy doesn't intend to pay. I watched as the man took his coffee and ran out of the store, the two servers just looking too exasperated to go after him. This is horrible," she whimpered. "Let's go, please." Outside wasn't much better. Everyone just followed the string's instructions, going about their daily lives. Lucy announced she was going home to sleep this off, and I agreed to walk her home. She only lived 10 minutes away. Away from the busier part of town, there were fewer strings. It was nice. We could pretend it wasn't happening for a minute. When we turned onto Lucy Street, she stopped, her mouth falling open. "What now?" I broke the silence, my voice surprisingly small. Look. She pointed outside one of her neighbors' houses. I saw it clearly, and I'll take my memory of that moment till the day I die. A little, dark imp, maybe 3 feet tall, walking along with its knuckles on the ground almost like a monkey. It had two bulbous yellow eyes taking up about half of its face and no mouth or other facial features. It was holding a hammer and a ball of twine, which was letting out behind it. It walked quietly and quickly from the front door of the house to the mailbox. It stopped, hammered a nail into the side of the box, and tied its string around it. It turned to face us and then stopped when it spotted us. My bottom fell out even further than it had already been, but it just stared with a look of surprise and curiosity. You could almost say it was the more frightened one. Suddenly it beckoned to us with a tiny hand. I looked at Lucy. She hadn't moved. I looked back at the imp, which stared at me. I halved the distance between us and then halved it again. This was not the fear of the unknown anymore. It was fear of this little guy. Didn't seem like anything to be scared of. When I was a meter away from it, it extended its hand. Hi. I shook it. It nodded in approval, blinking its massive yellow eyes up at me. So you're the ones in charge of the strings? It nodded eagerly. I called Lucy over, but she stayed where she was. There are more of you. Another nod. I wanted to ask it so many questions about what it was, where it came from, but now I was stuck with only yes or no questions. Do we even have free will? It just looked at me, almost sadly. Immediately felt sick to my stomach and couldn't bear looking at it anymore. Grabbed Lucy, who had been listening, and sat on the curb with her head in her hands. Come on. We entered her house, and I made her a cup of tea. When I found her in the living room, she had untied her dog and was curled up with it crying. I set the tea set down and sat down beside her. I'm so scared, she whispered after a good 10 minutes of sobbing. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I'm going to sleep, she mumbled suddenly, and was under within the minute. Sleep was starting to sound pretty good all of a sudden, my eyeballs suddenly feeling like they were being weighed down. I collapsed to the rug, and the last thing I heard before I fell asleep was the scurrying of several little feet nearby. I felt much better the next day, as if the whole affair had been a dream. I probably had believed that if I hadn't been woken by Lucy's mother that morning, wondering whether I was sleeping over without permission or something. Over breakfast, Lucy asked me why I looked so pale and nervous. I turned to her and smiled, mumbling something to her about feeling sick. The truth was, I was scared because I couldn't see any strings anymore, and I wondered whether my actions were truly my own. Russian researchers in the late 1940s kept 5 people awake for 15 days using an experimental gas-based stimulant. They were kept in a sealed environment to carefully monitor their oxygen intake so the gas didn't kill them since it was toxic in high concentrations. This was before closed-circuit cameras, so they only had microphones and 5-inch thick glass porthole-sized windows into the chamber to monitor them. The chamber was stocked with books, cots to sleep on with no bedding, running water and a toilet, and enough dried food to last all 5 for over a month. The test subjects were political prisoners deemed enemies of the state during World War II. Everything was fine for the first 5 days. The subjects hardly complained, having been promised, falsely, that they would be freed if they submitted to the test and did not sleep for 30 days. Their conversations and activities were monitored, and it was noted that they continued to talk about increasingly traumatic experiences in their past, and the general tone of their conversations took on a darker aspect after the 4-day mark. After 5 days, they started to complain about the circumstances and events that led them where they are and started to demonstrate severe paranoia. They stopped talking to each other and began alternatively whispering to the microphones in one-way mirrored portholes. Oddly, it seemed like they can win the trust of the experimenters by turning over their comrades and the other subjects in captivity with them. At first, the researchers suspected this was an effect of the gas itself. After 9 days, the first of them started screaming. He ran the length of the chamber, repeatedly yelling at the top of his lungs for 3 hours straight, and he continued to scream but was only able to produce occasional squeaks. The researchers postulated that he had physically torn his vocal cords. The most surprising thing about this behavior is how the other captives reacted to it, or rather, didn't react to it. They continued whispering into the microphones, until the second of the captives started to scream. The other non-screaming captives took the books apart, smearing page after page with their own feces and pasted them calmly over the glass portholes. The screaming promptly stopped, and so did the whispering to the mics. After 3 more days passed, the researchers checked the microphones hourly to make sure they were working, since they thought it must be impossible that no sound could be coming from a room with 5 people inside. The oxygen consumption in the chamber indicated that all 5 must still be alive. In fact, it was the amount of oxygen that 5 people consume at a very heavy level of strenuous exercise. On the morning of the 14th day, the researchers did something they said they would not do in order to get a reaction from the captives. They used the intercom inside the chamber, hoping to provoke any response from the captives they were afraid were either dead or vegetables at this point. They announced, "We are opening the chamber to test the microphones. Step away from the door and lie flat on the floor, or you shall be shot. Compliance will earn one of you your immediate freedom." To their surprise, they heard a single phrase in a calm voice respond, "We no longer want to be freed." Debate broke out among the researchers and the military forces funding the research. Unable to provoke any more response using the intercom, it was finally decided to open the chamber at midnight on the 15th day. The chamber was flushed of the stimulant gas and filled with fresh air, and immediately voices from the microphones began to object. 3 different voices began begging, as if pleading for the life of loved ones, to turn the gas back on. The chamber was opened, and soldiers sent in to retrieve the test subjects. They began to scream louder than ever, and so did the soldiers when they saw what was inside. 4 of the 5 test subjects were still alive, although no one can rightly call the state any of them were in life. The food rations past 5 days had not been touched. There were chunks of meat from the dead test subjects' thighs and chests stuffed into the drain in the center of the chamber, blocking the drain and allowing 4 inches of water to accumulate on the floor. Precisely how much of the water on the floor was actually blood was never determined. All 4 surviving test subjects also had large portions of muscle and skin torn away from their bodies. The destruction of flesh and exposed bone on their fingertips indicated that the wounds were inflicted by hand, not with teeth as the researchers initially thought. Closer examination of the position and angles of the wound indicated that most, if not all of them, were self-inflicted. The abdominal organs below the ribcage of all 4 test subjects had been removed. While the heart, lungs, and diaphragm remained in place, the skin and most of the muscles attached to the ribs had been ripped off, exposing the lungs through the ribcage. All the blood vessels and organs remained intact. They had just been taken out and laid on the floor, fanning out around the eviscerated but still living bodies of the subjects. The digestive tract of all 4 could be seen to be working, digesting food. Became quickly apparent that what they were digesting was their own flesh that they had ripped off and eaten over the course of days. Most of the soldiers were Russian special operatives at the facility, but still many refused to return to the chamber to remove the test subjects. They would continue to scream and to be left in the chamber, and alternatively begged and demanded that the gas be turned on, lest they fall asleep. To everyone's surprise, the test subjects put up a fierce fight in the process of being removed from the chamber. One of the Russian soldiers died from having his throat ripped out, another was gravely injured by having his testicles ripped off, and an artery in his leg severed by one of the subject's teeth. Another 5 of the soldiers lost their lives, if you count ones that committed suicide in the weeks that followed the incident. In the struggle, one of the 4 living test subjects had his spleen ruptured and he bled out almost immediately. The medical researchers attempted to sedate him, but this proved impossible. He was injected more than 10 times the human dose of morphine derivative and still fought like a cornered animal, breaking the ribs and arm of one doctor. When his heart was seen to beat for a full 2 minutes after he had bled to death, there was more air in his vascular system than blood. Even after it stopped, he continued to scream and flail for another 3 minutes, struggling to attack anyone in reach, just repeating the word "more" over and over, weaker and weaker, till he finally fell silent. The surviving 3 test subjects were heavily restrained and moved to a medical facility, the 2 with intact vocal cords continuously begging for the gas, demanding to be kept awake. The most injured of the 3 was taken to the only surgical operating room that the facility had. In the process of preparing the victim to have his organs placed back within the body, it was found that he was effectively immune to the sedative that he had given to prepare for the surgery. He fought furiously against his restraints when the anesthetic gas was brought out to put him under. He managed to tear most of his way through the 4-inch wide leather strap on one wrist, even though the weight of a 200-pound soldier holding that wrist as well. It took only a little more anesthetic than normal to put him under, and the instant his eyeballs fluttered and closed, his heart stopped. In the autopsy of the test subject that died on the operating table, it was found that his blood had tripled the normal amount of oxygen. His muscles that were still attached to his skeleton were badly torn, and he had broken 9 bones in his struggle to not be subdued. Most of them were from the force his own muscles had exerted on him. The second survivor had been the first of the group of 5 to start screaming. His vocal cords destroyed, he was unable to beg or object to surgery, and he only reacted by shaking his head violently in disapproval when the anesthetic gas was brought near him. He shook his head yes when someone finally suggested that they try the surgery without anesthetic. He did not react for the entire 6-hour procedure of replacing his abdominal organs and attempting to cover him up with what remained of his skin. The surgeon presiding stated repeatedly that it should be medically impossible for the patient to still be alive. One terrified nurse assisting the surgery stage, she had seen the patient's mouth curl into a smile several times whenever his eyes met hers. When the surgery ended, the subject looked at the surgeon and began to wheeze loudly, attempting to talk while struggling. Assuming this must be something of drastic importance, the surgeon had a pen and pad fetched so the patient could write his message. It was simple. Keep cutting. The other 2 subjects were given the same surgery, both without anesthetic as well, although they had to be injected with a paralytic for the duration of the operation. The surgeon found it impossible to perform the operation while the patients laughed continuously. Once paralyzed, the subjects could only follow the attending researchers with their eyes. The paralytic cleared their system in an abnormally short amount of time. They were soon trying to escape their bonds. The moment they could speak, they were again asking for the gas. The researchers asked why they had injured themselves, why they had ripped out their own guts, and why they wanted to be given the gas again. Only one response was given. I must remain awake. All 3 subjects' restraints were reinforced and they were placed back into the chamber awaiting determination as to what should be done with them. The researchers, facing the wrath of their military benefactors for having failed the stated goals of their project, considered euthanizing the surviving subjects. The commanding officer, an ex-KGB, instead saw potential and wanted to see what would happen if they were put back on the gas. The researchers were strongly objecting, but they were overruled. In preparation for being sealed in the chamber again, the subjects were connected to an EEG monitor and had their restraints padded for long-term confinement. To everyone's surprise, all 3 stopped struggling the moment it was let slip that they were going back on the gas. It was obvious at this point that all 3 were putting up a great struggle to stay awake. One of the subjects that could speak was humming loudly and continuously. The mute was straining his legs against the leather bounds with all his might, first left, then right, left again for something to focus on. The remaining subject was holding his head off his pillow and blinking rapidly. Having been the first to be wired for EEG, most of the researchers were monitoring his brainwaves in surprise. They were normal some of the time, but sometimes flatlined inexplicably. It looked as though he was repeatedly suffering brain death before returning to normal. As they focused on paper scrolling out of the brainwave monitor, only one nurse saw his eyes slip shut at the same moment his head hit the pillow. His brainwaves immediately changed to that of deep sleep, then flatlined for the last time as his heart simultaneously stopped. The one remaining subject that could speak started screaming to be sealed in now. His brainwaves showed the same flat lines as one who had died just before from falling asleep. The commander gave the order to seal the chamber with both subjects inside, as well as three researchers. One of the named three immediately drew his gun and shot the commander point blank beneath the One of the named three immediately drew his gun and shot the commander point blank between the eyes, and then turned the gun on the mute subject and blew his brains out as well. He pointed his gun at the remaining subject, still restrained to a bed, as the remaining members of the medical and research team fled the room. "I will not be locked in this room with you things. Not with you!" he screamed at the man strapped to the table. "What are you?" he demanded. "I must know." The subject smiled. "Have you forgotten so easily?" the subject asked. "We are you. We are the madness that lurks within you all, begging to be free at every moment in your deepest animal instinct. We are what you hide from in your beds every night. We are what you sedate into silence and paralysis when you go to the nocturnal heaven where we cannot tread." The researcher paused, then aimed at the subject's heart and fired. The EEG flatlined as the subject weakly choked out, "So nearly free."